The extraordinary life of the most brilliant polymath in human history, Leonardo da Vinci. Tone: cinematic, inspiring, and reflective, perfect for narration or a podcast cold open. If humanity ever produced a mind that transcended the boundaries of its own time. A man who was a painter, engineer, anatomist, mathematician, inventor, architect, philosopher, all in one. That man was Leonardo da Vinci. Born in a small village in Italy, illegitimate and without formal education. He didn't just see the world, he observed it. Every falling leaf, every strand of hair, every swirl of water, every gust of wind. He sketched it, measured it, dissected it, reimagined it with a vision no one else could match. And he didn't do it to create beauty alone. He did it to understand how the universe works, and where humans fit within it. In this episode, we'll trace the journey of a man centuries ahead of his time. A man who drew designs for flying machines when no one had even dreamed of hot air balloons. A man who painted the Mona Lisa, a portrait so enigmatic. The world has spent 500 years trying to decode her smile. A man who wrote thousands of pages in mirrored script, with his left hand, in notebooks only he could read. Da Vinci wasn't a genius in one field. He was living proof of a rare truth. Creativity has no limit, and a free mind can outlive time itself. The illegitimate child who saw the world differently. Leonardo da Vinci was born on April 15, 1452, in the small town of Vinci, near Florence, Italy. He was the illegitimate son of a notary, Messer Piero da Vinci, and a peasant woman named Caterina. In a time when birthright determined one's future, Leonardo was already at a disadvantage. He couldn't inherit his father's status or attend formal schools reserved for nobility. But this social boundary may have been what gave Leonardo the freedom to explore the world on his own terms. As a child, he showed an unusual sensitivity to nature. He wandered the hills and streams around Vinci, sketching plants, animals, and rocks. While other boys learned Latin and law, Leonardo taught himself through observation. He didn't just look, he studied. The structure of feathers, the symmetry of leaves, the mechanics of flight in birds. Nothing was too small or too mundane for his curiosity. At around 14, his father recognized his artistic talent and apprenticed him to Andrea del Verrocchio, a master artist in Florence. Verrocchio's studio was no ordinary place, it was a hub of the Renaissance, where painting, sculpture, engineering, and architecture mixed freely. Leonardo learned not just to paint, but to mold, construct, calculate. He became obsessed with perfection, sometimes painting just a hand or a smile over and over until it felt alive. According to legend, Leonardo's work on one of Verrocchio's paintings, The Angel in the Baptism of Christ, was so extraordinary. Verrocchio never painted again. Even in his teens, Leonardo stood out. He kept notebooks filled with sketches and inventions, machines for flight, devices for lifting, designs for war and water. He wrote from right to left, using mirror script, perhaps as a way to hide his ideas, or simply because it came naturally to a left-hander. By the time he was in his 20s, Leonardo was already known in Florence. But he didn't just want fame. He wanted answers, and for Leonardo, art and science were never separate. To paint the human form, he had to understand anatomy. To imagine machines, he had to master physics. To design buildings, he studied nature itself. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't trying to be brilliant. He was trying to understand, deeply, honestly, and endlessly. And that is where his genius truly began. The Renaissance court, Florence, Milan, and the making of a master. By his early 20s, Leonardo da Vinci had made a name for himself in Florence. But ambition and curiosity pushed him beyond the comfort of his homeland. In the late 1480s, he left Florence and traveled to Milan, seeking greater challenges, bigger projects, and more freedom to experiment. In Milan, Leonardo presented himself not just as an artist, but as a military engineer, inventor, and architect. In a bold letter to the Duke of Milan, Ludovico Sforza, he offered designs for bridges, weapons, and fortresses, and then humbly mentioned, "I can also paint." That humility was classic Leonardo, confident in ideas, but quiet in ego. Soon, He became court artist for the Sforza family. During these years, Leonardo worked on everything from city planning to theater stage designs. He painted, designed machines, and wrote endlessly, and this was when he began his greatest masterpiece, The Last Supper. Painted directly onto a convent wall in Milan, The Last Supper wasn't just a religious scene. It was a moment frozen in tension. Leonardo captured the exact second Jesus says, "One of you will betray me." Each apostle reacts differently: shock, denial, anger, sorrow. It was human drama, painted with mathematical composition and emotional depth. Even today, the mural draws millions, despite centuries of damage and restoration. During this period, Leonardo also began intense anatomical studies. He dissected human corpses, drew detailed illustrations of muscles, organs, even unborn fetuses. His drawings were not just scientific, they were beautiful. These studies were never published in his lifetime, but they revealed a man who believed knowledge had no boundaries. He designed machines that wouldn't be built for centuries: helicopters, tanks, underwater breathing devices. Some looked like science fiction, but all came from a deep understanding of nature. He studied how birds glide, how water flows, how light bends. He believed that everything in nature was connected: art, mechanics, biology, even the human soul. But not everything he touched turned to gold. Leonardo was notorious for starting commissions he never finished. He could get bored, distracted by a new idea before the last one was done. He was a perfectionist, sometimes to a fault. Still, his fame continued to grow. People weren't just impressed by what he created, but by how he thought. He made notebooks for everything: drawings, inventions, dreams, questions. He wrote backwards, sideways, in spirals. He didn't create for an audience. He created to understand. The scientist before science: discovery, isolation, and the search for truth. As the years went on, Leonardo da Vinci became more than just an artist. He was an engineer, a scientist, a philosopher, but not in the modern sense. He had no formal scientific training, no lab, no degree, and yet, the way he questioned the world was deeply scientific. Leonardo believed that the universe was knowable, not through scripture, but through observation. He didn't just read about anatomy, he dissected bodies himself. He didn't theorize blindly, he sketched hundreds of machines, bridges, and mechanical systems based on how nature worked. He studied light and optics, water currents and geology, human proportion and architecture. In his notes, he pondered the movement of the heart, the function of the brain, and the mechanics of flight. His sketches of human organs were centuries ahead of his time, but Leonardo published almost nothing. His discoveries, like how the aortic valve worked, weren't shared with the world until centuries later. He worked mostly alone, obsessively, filling page after page of mirror-written notes and technical diagrams. He often struggled to finish commissions. He'd start a project, only to abandon it for a new curiosity. His reputation as a genius grew, but so did whispers that he was unreliable. Patrons admired his mind, but feared his delays. In his final years, Leonardo found refuge in France, under the protection of King Francis I there. He lived in the Château du Clos-Lucé, continuing to write, draw, and mentor young artists. The king visited him often, fascinated by his intellect. On May 2, 1519, Leonardo da Vinci died at age 67. Some say he died in the arms of the king himself, a poetic image, though likely apocryphal. What he left behind wasn't just paintings or notebooks. He left behind a way of seeing, a belief that truth could be touched, not by faith or power, but by curiosity, patience, and careful attention to the world. Leonardo didn't divide science and art. To him, they were one and the same. And in that unity, he lived centuries ahead of the rest of us. Legacy: the man who bridged worlds. Centuries after his death, Leonardo da Vinci's legacy is more alive than ever. His notebooks, once private and unread, are now studied by artists, scientists, and thinkers across the globe. His paintings are revered, his machines reconstructed, his ideas still debated. But what exactly did Leonardo leave behind? More than any invention or artwork, Leonardo da Vinci left us a mindset, a belief that curiosity was sacred, that to look deeply, to ask, To draw, to test, to observe was not just science or art, but a way of being. His art inspired generations. The Last Supper, Mona Lisa, Vitruvian Man, they're not just beautiful images. They're windows into how he thought. Every stroke of paint, every line of proportion, every gaze carefully studied, deeply felt. In science, he envisioned things the world wouldn't build for centuries. From flying machines to underwater gear, from heart valves to city sanitation systems. He wasn't always right, but he was always curious. And that curiosity was contagious. Today, we live in a world Leonardo would have loved. Technology, exploration, and access to knowledge at our fingertips. Yet in that very world, we risk losing what made him timeless: depth, patience, wonder. Leonardo reminds us that brilliance doesn't come from rushing, or from specializing too soon. It comes from asking better questions, from seeing patterns, from being humble before the unknown. He wasn't rich, he wasn't royalty, he wasn't even properly educated, but he saw clearly, and without fear. And that, more than genius, is what made Leonardo da Vinci truly great.